Atlanta is one of the most important cities in the Southeast. Take a look at Atlanta. Notice something about its geography? Atlanta is completely landlocked. Wow. So why is this city so large? Why is it so important? The answer is the railroads. Atlanta was, and still is in some cases, a really important rail hub. In the years after the Civil War, and with Reconstruction, Atlanta only became more of a rail hub. But with all this rail traffic, lines directly into the city of Atlanta became congested. And this is where the BeltLine comes into play. The BeltLine began as a railroad bypass around the congested downtown railroads. It was pretty much the I-285, but for trains, if that makes sense. At the time, the area around the belt was pretty much rural, so the land was cheap and easy to develop. The BeltLine was built by 4 separate railroad companies: Southern Railway, the Atlanta and West Point Railroad, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, and the Seaboard Airline. Each segment was built by the railroad company for their own use, allowing trains to not only quickly bypass the city, but also access their maintenance facilities on the outskirts of the town without impacting the downtown traffic. Construction on the belt began in 1871, 6 years after the Civil War ended. The BeltLine was a great economic case for rebuilding the city of Atlanta, because after the Civil War, let's just say Atlanta wasn't looking too hot. Or it was looking hot. I don't know.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
The BeltLine would end up being completed in 1910. The height of the BeltLine's use was in the early 20th century. Directly after its completion, major industries such as General Electric and Ford located their factories directly beside it. By the mid-century, the U.S. government was engaged in their massive project to build interstates all across the U.S. This means that local freight was being delivered less by rail and more by trucks. During this period, transfer facilities began to arise along the BeltLine, transferring goods from trains to trucks, and vice versa. By the 1960s, the BeltLine was largely abandoned. Today, along the BeltLine, there are quiet residential neighborhoods, bustling commercial centers, and stagnant industrial zones. While some of these areas are seeing positive growth and development, many are economically deprived and in need of revitalization. The Atlanta BeltLine Incorporated was created in order to solve just that. The Atlanta BeltLine is a 22-mile, somewhat opened but mostly planned loop of multi-use trails and light rail on the former railway corridor. The Atlanta BeltLine is designed to reconnect neighborhoods and communities historically divided and marginalized by infrastructure, improve transportation, add green space, promote development, showcase Atlanta's art and culture, and create and preserve affordable housing. As we go further on in this series, you'll realize that the latter goal isn't quite being reached. The project is in varying stages of development, with several mainline and spur trails being completed, and others just being unpaved but hikeable. Currently, there are no light rail or streetcar tracks being built. There is one section that is almost shovel-ready, with the others being in various stages of planning, or just not fully planned out at all. But that's also another problem that I'm going to save for later on in this series. In the summer of 2012, there was a referendum on whether or not a 1-cent sales tax should be implemented to fund traffic and road improvements. If approved, the tax would have funded several streetcar routes along the portions of the BeltLine Trail. The streetcar routes would have created connections between MARTA stations and the downtown loop streetcar. Unfortunately, the sales tax did not pass. However, that didn't mean it was the end for the streetcar. In 2016, Atlanta voters passed the more MARTA sales tax, providing a future $1.3 billion for the expansion of transit in the city. 3 years later, in 2019, MARTA Board of Directors officially implemented the program. The project includes the expansion of the existing Atlanta streetcar tracks along the BeltLine corridor, a project known as the Streetcar East Extension and the Streetcar West Extension. Also included in the funding is the BeltLine Northeast Light Rail Transit Corridor, the BeltLine Southwest Light Rail Transit Corridor, and the BeltLine Southeast Light Rail Transit Corridor. It should be noted that since the passage of the more MARTA sales tax in 2016, construction of the light rail streetcar system has been overseen by MARTA in close partnership with Atlanta BeltLine Incorporated. Okay, now that basic stuff is out the way, let's go straight into the details of the infrastructure we're working with.
Well, the debate continues tonight over whether to expand Atlanta's streetcar. Right now, the streetcar travels around downtown Atlanta and Auburn Avenue.
But a recently greenlit proposal would have it travel along the BeltLine towards Midtown.
Please exit through the rear door.
Doors open.
Well, that was the longest intro to an 8-minute video I think you'll ever see. Welcome to the Atlanta BeltLine episode number 1. Today we're going to talk about the northwest section of the BeltLine corridor. The northwest section is by far the least worked on the entire present-day BeltLine project. Part of the reasoning for that is that this section is the most active out of all the sections on the BeltLine corridor. Freight trains still use this section to this day. This section of the belt consists of 4 railroads: Southern Railway, the Atlanta, Birmingham and Coastline Railway, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, and the Seaboard Airline. Dates for the construction of this section of the railroad isn't quite clear, with the earliest documented representation of this section of the belt being in 1888. In this 1888 map, you can see the northernmost sections of the BeltLine being depicted. This section of the BeltLine is pretty strange, especially when looking at this map. The Seaboard Airline, which is at the top, and the Southern Railroad, which is directly underneath it and labeled BeltLine Railroad, are both considered part of the BeltLine, despite the fact that the Seaboard Airline continues out east and doesn't actually connect and finish the loop for the belt. There was an injunction and still is an injunction between the Seaboard Airline and the Southern Railroad near Armour. So is the Seaboard Airline part of the belt? If you say so. You can be whatever you want to be. And the Atlanta BeltLine Incorporated took that to heart, because the Seaboard Airline and not the BeltLine is the right-of-way that they're planning to build on. The reasoning behind them not using the actual BeltLine as their corridor is because of, surprise surprise, a Class 1 railroad. A Class 1 railroad named Amtrak. Yeah, it's actually not the freight railroad's fault this time. The reasoning behind Amtrak getting in the way is because of their plans to make Atlanta a future intercity rail hub. Put simply, there's not enough space on the right-of-way for them to share, especially because the right-of-way will need to be expanded for future Amtrak services. And I think that leaves me with my final problem that I'll be discussing about the Atlanta BeltLine project: the lack of intermodal stations. But yeah, that will be discussed in a future video. And you know what that means? 300 likes for part 2. There will probably be around 4 or 5 parts for this series. So I hope this was a good introductory video for you all. With that being said, if I earned your like and subscription, I love you. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching.
Doors open.